Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Magic Mics. I am Evan Irwin, and we're getting started as we do each and every week by introducing my two co-hosts, Aaron Campbell.
Guten Abend.
And Ruben Bressler.
Hello.
How you guys doing?
Doing all right.
We're
Finally got some sleep.
Well, that's good. Sleep's good. Sleep's positive.
It was touch and go for a while there. I was not getting a lot of sleep for the first couple days while I was out here in Vegas.
Right.
So,
Did you wake up like that?
did wake up like
You
this.
did wake up like that. Okay.
This is just how my face looks.
It's just the face he put on. So we are smack dab in Eldritch Moon spoiler time, amongst a variety of really interesting, sort of dramatic topics, I would say, just full of drama, just lots of drama. But we have to kind of kick off with Eldritch Moon spoilers. This week we're going to talk a little bit about Eldritch Moon spoilers. Then we're going to talk a little bit about a new team for the SCG Tour. Then we're going to talk a little bit about MTG finance and a whole mess of that good stuff. And then we'll have a really sweet finisher for you guys as we do each and every week. But we'll kick it off with spoilers. Now, we already had our own spoiler tree prediction, which was great. There's few experiences that you can have, like going on about a card for a good 3 to 4 minutes when everything you just said was wrong. It's a good experience. It's you grow deep. But the idea of being able to turn to frog with the ability on the stack is still cool. EDH players just absolutely went nuts over that card, and that's a great thing. But we're going to start with some brand new spoilers, and this first spoiler we want to talk about this week for Eldritch Moon is Gisa and Geralf. And as someone, a fan of the show even, Maxime, who's a wonderful person, amazing, they're just going to let us know that that's fine, and they get that, but you're wrong, and I hate you.
Our very own personal Photoshop
Guru.
troll artist, I'm going to say.
Guru.
Yeah.
He uses his powers for good, so I wouldn't call him a troll. But that is so indicative of our relationship, though. I mean, just
he only
the whole,
jokes about the ones that he loves, I guess.
Yeah,
So.
and that's
but I really.
Yeah, absolutely insane. So I just put that up on the screen. Amazing Photoshop, absolutely terrific. He made a Photoshop of me as Rich Hagon. If you guys link it to me, I'll put it on the screen. I don't have it right in front of me right now, but it was absolutely. I think it went into what they describe as the uncanny valley, which is where things are just disturbing. They're too real, they're too good.
But also not real enough.
Right, clearly not real,
time.
but real enough.
Well, he did one earlier where he photoshopped Paul, Chian, and Kenji together into one being, and people were like, "This is just too real. You gotta take a step back." And he's very good. He's very good at what he does.
Absolutely.
Well, for the non-photoshopped version of the card, first of all, 4/4 for 4 in blue-black is pretty nutty. And then 2 positive abilities stapled onto it. I actually think that there's a reasonable shot that this card sees play in Standard.
It's possible. So let's first get down the abilities before we talk about our opinions on it. For those listening, it's a black, blue, and 2 generic mana for a 4/4 legendary human wizard. When Gisa and Geralf enter the battlefield, you put the top 4 cards of your library into your graveyard, and during each of your turns, you may cast a zombie creature card from your graveyard. Aaron, this has to be just have you written all over it.
Yes, I was actually really excited when this card came out. I described
You
this
don't
card
say.
I was very excited. Yeah, I would describe it as a hug from Jesus, like I do. I could just feel the arms slowly wrapping around me. The only thing I want from this set is I really, really want zombies to be a thing again. I'm really tired of humans. I'm really tired of tokens. And if zombies are going to be such an important part of this storyline, I think it's only fitting that they be a thing in Standard again. And it'd be very disappointing for me if that didn't happen. And so I've been looking for cards that I think can maybe help the archetype out a little bit. And when I first saw this, it does seem like they are, if zombies are to become a thing, it does seem like they're going in a self-mill direction. There's a 1 and a black common zombie too that also tells you to mill for 2. Screeching Scab is still in the format, and this also tells you to mill when you play it. And so, being able to play a blue-black deck with things like Prized Amalgam, Undead Servant is another one. Being able to play an Undead Servant from the graveyard, getting a token for other Undead Servants in your graveyard, and get Prized Amalgam back. I mean, that's just magical Christmas land. What more could a girl want? And so, I do worry that it's a little expensive. 2 and 2, 2 and 2 of a color may not be the thing we need. But even at the very least, they're still very popular characters in the lore. And even just being able to build a Gisa and Geralf commander deck would be awesome as well. But I'm really hoping that this can make a dent in Standard.
This feels like the set where Wizards is like, we want to have zombies exist in standard. These are all the tools that you were looking for in the first set, but they showed up here. Ruben?
Mm-hmm.
I was just going to say that, you know, the text box is nice and all, but 4/4 for 4 is not something that Blue-Black gets all the time. I mean, there's only a half dozen of them that have ever been printed ever, and most of them have somewhat severe drawbacks. This one's the only one that is purely upside, as far as I can tell. Milling 4 cards, I suppose, puts you closer to milling yourself, but it's not. If that's what your deck's doing, then it's not. And during each of your turns, you may cast a zombie creature card from your graveyard is an extremely powerful engine in what I assume is going to be a pretty zombie-centric set. We've already got a lot of good zombies to combo with it in Standard, even without any more zombies coming out in Eldritch Moon. And so I think Gisa and Geralf is no joke. It's going to be odd trying to maintain the balance between control deck, which this is sort of trying to be like a slower, like Wart the Raid Mother comes to mind, or a Wart Boggart Auntie comes to mind when I look at this card. It's somewhat similar with that. In terms of the card advantage of trying to reuse your zombies. And that sort of went in more of a mid-range deck, whereas zombies tend to be more of a swarm kind of aggro deck. And so I'll be interested to see if this can actually find a place in a zombie deck in Standard.
With so many great ways to mill yourself and like amazing cards like Diregraph Colossus that have just been completely overshadowed. But I will note, and I think we're going to see a theme in not just like these past few weeks of spoilers, but even these new spoilers, that Green, White, and Bant have gotten so much more than they really deserve. And I don't really fault Wizards when they can't read metagames 18 months ahead of time, but I would note that this is kind of what happens when you see like one strategy is way better than the other, and a new set comes out and a new set gives that strategy more tools, and you go like, why did you ever blah blah blah? And it kind of happens with most strategies these days in terms of the way that Wizards tends to build sets, which in my experience is like they give you some tools and then they give you some more and they give you some really good ones, and then right before the rotation they give you some crazy good ones for that archetype, and then they pull back, and then everything's different and everything changes. But but right now with Green White being ridiculous and Bant being somewhat, if not on par, just as good, you're going to see some really powerful stuff we're going to go over. So next up, let's talk about Harmless Offering, because first of all, it has a kitty cat on it, and if you're just listening to us, I'm sorry you can't see the most adorable little crazy kitty cat that Howard Lyon drew that has a mouth on its tail, and that's kind of horrifying. What we have here, ladies and gentlemen, is Donate, but it is in a different color, a color shifted Donate, a red and 2 generic mana sorcery. Target opponent gains control of target opponent or target permanent you control. So you give them a thing. You give them the kitty cat that has the mouth on the tail, and it's probably going to kill them. There was a really interesting there's a really interesting Tumblr post by Mark Rosewater where somebody said, would you ever reprint Donate? And he actually does an entire parody riff of Green Eggs and Ham. And the joke that when you kind of look back on that Tumblr post, because he keeps saying, I will not do it, Sam I am, so on and so forth. The entire joke of that book is that you keep saying you're not going to do it, but you do it. And so he keeps saying, nope, not going to do Donate again. It makes Donate again. So it's really cool looking back and seeing those things where Wizards just really plays with expectations, and they play with like these little tiny hints of what they're going to do, what they're not going to do. And ultimately, it's really cool to see Donate back, even if it's color shifted. I like it in red. I think it's really sweet there.
I think it makes sense in red.
And we'll see if it even actually does anything.
Yeah, that's going to be the weird part, because obviously Donate had Delusions of Grandeur to be the end-all, be-all, endgame combo. Obviously, there's a slight difference between Harmless Offering and Donate, because Donate says target player gains control of target permanent you control. Sure. So you could do things with Act of Treason, for example, where you could donate something to yourself that you'd stolen for the turn. The other thing is that there isn't that much to give to your opponent in Standard right now, other than Demonic Pact. A lot of people have been talking about Demonic Pact as the thing to give to your opponent when there's only the lose the game mode left, which is cute. I mean, and you can also give things like, Gold Knight Castigator to make them take a bunch of damage. If you give them like a really corner case card like Assault Formation, and they're depending on a bunch of 2/1s for damage, then they become 1/1s. There's like really weird corner case things that you can do with this card. I don't think it's going to be. I mean, people are going to build the Demonic Pact deck. We'll see if it's good. probably won't be good.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I had a friend who plays EDH, and he thought about aggressive mining, that red enchantment where you can't play lands. Be like, here you go.
Donating an aggressive mining is a good one. Immortal Coil in Modern is a good one. But there's not a ton.
You know what donating aggressive mining is? It's aggressive.
Wow. Unbelievable. It's a land grant as well. But yeah, so we'll see. I mean, the reason to pick up copies of this card is certainly not for the card's effect. I anticipate that foils of this card with shiny kitty cats will be quite expensive for many years to come.
And can we talk about how subtle that art is? You know, this art kind of reminds me of the art for Ad Nauseam, where like you can look at it, and every time you do, you kind of notice something different in the background. You know, so you're looking at it, and you kind of miss the tail, and then all of a sudden you miss the lick of blood on its mouth, and then you miss the bandage on the guy's finger, and every time you look at it, you feel like you discover something else, and it's just fantastic artwork.
Oh, yeah. Well, I certainly, the first time I looked at it, I was like, wow, they literally just made a picture of a kitty cat? And I was like, kitty cat? And later I looked and I was like, oh, that's a mouth on his tail. That's crazy. You know, so there was a lot of like, oh my God, kind of reveal moments. Speaking of an oh my God kind of reveal moment, there's this next card we're going to talk about. It's called Eldrazi Evolution. It is...
Eldrazi Evolution.
I'm sorry. No, Eldritch Evolution.
Is it Eldritch? Okay, sorry.
Eldritch Evolution, no problem. Eldritch Evolution is a 2 green and 1 generic mana rare sorcery. As an additional cost to cast it, you must sacrifice a creature. You search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost of X or less, where X is 2 plus the sacrificed creature's converted mana cost. Put that card onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library and exile Eldritch Evolution. So, really? Natural Order is a card. Now, Natural Order can let you turn your 1 mana dude into an 8 mana guy, so that's a thing. But the idea of being able to have one spell that takes a thing and turns it into something far greater than itself, the ability to have silly plays like turn 1 birds, turn 2, you know, sacrifice the birds and go get a Magus of the Moon. You know, like the ability for people to try to cheat out high converted mana cost stuff, sacrifice it to Eldrazi Evolution, and go get Iona, go get Gristlebrand, where we have the Allosaurus Riders all of a sudden, you know, the Allosaurus
$17 a piece now, buyout.
People bought out Allosaurus Riders. People were talking about trying to see if Ghoul Tree could be a thing. 7 colorless and a green with also a cost reduction effect. I mean, whenever a card like this comes out, people are going to look for what is the most broken possible thing that you can do.
Right.
And where this will settle is very similar to the spot where Birthing Pod settled, which is that you don't need it to do the most broken thing. You just need it to do a somewhat broken thing with lots of options.
Yeah.
And so I would anticipate this card going into a Eldrazi shell where you just sacrifice Matter Reshapers to go get Reality Smashers. Jeez. That's all I'm expecting at it. I mean, that's ridiculous already. Like, sacrifice your Matter Reshaper, put either a land or an Eldrazi Displacer onto the battlefield, and go get a Smasher. That's already busted. Let alone the fact that you can turn a 1-drop into a 3-drop and a Thought-Knot Seer into an Endbringer or whatever. Right. There's a ton you can do with this card. This card is the real deal. I anticipate it will have a big effect in Modern as well, and I bet that they're going to figure out a way to make it good in Legacy outside of Elves, since the 1 mana less option on Eldritch Evolution is a big deal in a lot of decks that aren't Elves. And so we'll see if things like Nick Fit want to try to pick up on Eldrazi Evolution as well.
Right. Aaron?
I hate this card.
Why?
I hate the concept of it, and here's why. So, Birthing Pod gets banned, and they give really good reasons as to why Birthing Pod needs to go. And I didn't really have a dog in the fight either way. Like, I was playing a deck that was fine with it, but a lot of the reasons were very sound. And then a short time later, Collected Company comes out, and it's like, well, you just said that. Okay. So Collected Company is doing its thing. They've admitted that they're pushing creatures, that the power level on creatures has gotten a lot better.
Right.
And, when the new Thalia came out, people were like, oh, great. We can Collected Company into Thalia. And it's just like, no, that's not. And so there's another card we're going to talk about later on in the evening that has the same effect. And then, I just feel like we're going to be back here again. Collected Company, we're headed in that direction again, where people are starting to do crazy things. Eldrazi or Eldritch Evolution, we've seen it in the the past too. Green Sun Zenith is banned in Modern.
Right.
Survival in the Fittest banned in Legacy. You know, there's these things where it's like, you know, we've kind of decided that green being able to tutor for things is just a bad deal. And for whatever reason, you know, Wizards keeps trying to do it. And no, we're to do it again. Stop. Like, this is a bad idea. This is something that green should not be allowed to do. We've seen it time and time again that it ends up going horribly awry. And yet every time a new set comes out, we have like a 2.0, a 3.0. And I would really just like to see that concept of green being able to do this just be axed, because just nothing good ever comes from it.
And I would note that you're not necessarily wrong. You know, I get it's fine. I get that. It's wrong. And I hate you. No, I honestly, no. For the thing is, for me, I feel like we as the Magic community like when Wizards prints powerful, exciting cards. For what it's worth, love it or hate it, it's a powerful and exciting card. It's probably busted just by the way Magic works.
Been done before in the past, and to terrible results, like, or good results depending on your perspective. But this isn't like they're trying something experimental, you know, and it happens to go really well. This is something that has a history of doing broken things, and so we're going to be here 6 months from now discussing something, and you know, Wizards are going to be, we didn't know, and it's like, just you've had several instances in the past of this going wrong, and yet you keep trying. Like, knock it off.
It's a little shocking in its power level. That's all I'm saying. Like,
it's
so close to natural order. I was like, my God, seriously?
Yeah.
All right. So let's see here. Let's move on here real quickly to Decimator of Provinces. And Decimator of Provinces is ridiculously huge, and it's freakishly kind of ugly. It is a 10 generic mana mythic 7/7 Eldrazi boar, and it is as freakish as your mind is making it out for those who are listening. It has a merge of 3 green and 6 generic mana, so that's a 9 mana emerge cost. However, when you cast it, creatures you control get +2/+2 and gain trample until end of turn. It also has trample and haste, because why not? So Craterhoof Behemoth is a card. This is very similar-ish to that type of card. It is a very exciting, like Johnny Mythic, I think, to try to sneak it out. Timmy Mythic, because it's huge and monstrous, and if it's as good as it may very well be, it's going to be a spike, like a monster spike card. The card is very, very powerful, in my opinion. Thoughts?
Yeah, this card's great. I mean, it can't get natural, or you can't natural order for it because it's not green technically. So that's a plus. You know, I think that it's a fixed Craterhoof Behemoth. Craterhoof Behemoth was absurd.
Yeah.
It was just way too good for what it did. It was way too cost efficient. 2+2/+2 and trample is quite good, but it's certainly no +X/+X, where X is the number of elves in your elf deck. And so while I certainly expect this card to see play, it's a very big finisher, and there's always going to be things to sacrifice to it. It's not going to be as completely busted in the older formats as Craterhoof Behemoth.
Sure. Aaron, do you have any thoughts on old Decimator?
The only thing I could think of was it was spoiled in French, wasn't it?
I think so.
Okay, and so I immediately went into my Helen voice and was like, Decimator de Provinces, and just kind of had my little, you know, how it's going to interact with the ecosystem, and that was immediately where my mind went with it. I just read it all as, I don't even speak French, I don't even read French, but I just read it as if I was Helen Bourgeot, and it was just, in that instance, I really enjoyed the card, you know. We have a pretty name mint, and, you know, 7/7, and the piggy is going to ruin the world, and make the players very sad, and I was just very happy at that point.
So Aaron, for a card that it seems to be made for you, speaking of cards made for you and all, can you tell us what Collective Brutality does?
Oh man, a Collective Brutality is like Hanukkah on a card. It's just one gift after another. It's fantastic. So Collective Brutality is 1 and a black. It has escalate, discard a card. And who doesn't love discarding their own cards? I mean, come on. And so it has 3 modes. The first one is target opponent reveals their hand. You choose an instant or sorcery card from it, and they discard. The second mode is target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. And the third mode is an opponent loses 2 life, and you gain 2 life. When I first saw this card, I didn't know that escalate, each mode could only be chosen once. So when I first saw that, I was like, I play ad nauseum. I was like, I can just draw my whole deck and discard my deck. This is awesome. And then people were like, wait a minute, girl, you can only choose each mode once. But this is still not bad. You know, again, Madness is still a thing. Dredge is still a thing. I mean, there are reasons why you'd want to discard cards, and being able to fill your graveyard. If we're going with zombies, and if the self-mill ends up being the way to build a zombie deck, being able to chuck a bunch of zombies into your graveyard and do this thing, this is glorious. I'm very happy to see this card.
Card seems really interesting, particularly in that I still feel like there's more Escalate cards to be revealed. There's a few that's been revealed so far, including this one, that have very powerful effects. And I just, again, I'm holding out that hope for that Cryptic Command. I'm holding out for that blue one that's going to be insane. So, my fingers.
There will be a
are
blue
crossed.
one. It will be atrocious.
It will be craptacular, won't it?
I can only hope that it just has the worst. It's like, put a 1/3 Kelp token onto the battlefield, draw 2, discard your hand.
Experience sadness,
Yeah,
Right.
I don't even. Mill your top 3 cards, just like the worst possible thing. But yeah, Collective Brutality is nice. I think that more often than not, this is over 50% of the time going to be colorless and black, discard a card, pseudo thought or duress an opponent, kill their creature, which is plenty good enough. Even if you're just discarding a land, you're killing off a very powerful effect in their hand and a creature that they have in play. And it gives you the added flexibility of being able to gain life if you're getting low, or potentially finish off an opponent Sign in Blood style. So this is a quite powerful card.
I think it's also good in this current standard. I'm sorry, just because of like how versatile the decks are, where it's like they're in standard, the decks are not just linear. It's like you have green-white tokens that plays like a creature deck, but that the creatures come from spells, and then there's planeswalkers, and so you can't just attack them as if I'm just going to put in 3 Virulent Plague. And so a card like this that can attack a deck from every angle, I think is also really good right now, because these decks just come at you in so many different ways.
Yeah, the biggest problem with this card is -2/-2 doesn't actually kill anything that you want to kill. There are way too many 2/3s and 3/3s in the format right now, and also the life loss doesn't deal with planeswalkers. So there are a couple of spots that this card misses. But for 2 mana, with all of these options and all this power, I mean, I don't know what more you could ask for before the card is completely busted.
Yeah.
So really interesting. As we were talking here, a new card has been spoiled.
You saw that?
Called Stunning Growth. It is a 1 green, 3 generic mana rare sorcery. Very simple line of text. Return all land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped.
Wow.
So for 4 mana, all your land cards from the graveyard right onto the battlefield tapped. So so the Get Frog or the Get Frog monster is very happy. The Get Frog.
Yeah. The Get Frog.
He's super pleased. But it was a really interesting card. But anyway, we're going to move back to the slide here where we talk about Ishkanah Grafwidow. Now, this is the legendary spider, and correct me if I'm wrong, the only legendary spider.
How did you pronounce it?
Ishkanah.
Okay, I called her Ishkanah. I was just curious.
I have no idea what's right. I'm a simple caveman lawyer, but regardless,
we'll have to wait for the pronunciation guide.
Exactly. So for a green and 4 generic mana, it is a mythic legendary spider. It is a 3/5 with reach. It has delirium that says when it enters the battlefield, if you have delirium online, you put 3 1/2 green spider creature tokens with reach onto the battlefield, as you should. And it has 1 activated ability of 1 black and 6 generic mana : target opponent loses 1 life for each spider you control. Now I want to point out really quickly here. First of all, Wizards, you did a great job here. You actually did a terrific
well done.
job. You took the idea of a legendary spider. It looks like a legendary spider. It feels like it. It interacts with the spiders. It makes spiders. It has abilities based on spiders. And I want you to go back and I want you to look at your legendary werewolf, okay? And I want you to see that you punted that thing so hard it must have been sleeved in pigskin. I'm telling you, you guys it's bad. It's really bad when you compare how awesome this spider is to how not great that legendary werewolf is. And that's just a thing. And I kind of expected more. And this is the type of, and this Ishkanah, this legendary spider is what I expected to see from a legendary spider. Whereas the legendary werewolf was what? None of these abilities make any werewolf-y type sense. Nothing about transforming and nothing about other werewolves, nothing about wolf tokens or whatever. Whereas the spider's making spider tokens. It works with all your other spiders. It's a sweet, activated ability. It's going to be an awesome commander. Like, this is the type of stuff that players wanted out of their legendary creatures of this, that they've been waiting forever to get the one. And so when you got the 1 spider, by God, all the spider players are happy. And Wizards really killed it with this one.
Absolutely. And the best part is that the 4 colorless and a green casting cost and then 6 colorless and a black flashback is exactly the same as spider spawning, which is one of the most popular cards from the original Innistrad draft format.
Yeah.
be a 3/5 for 5 with reach is exactly what you want a big spider to be. It has a cool delirium effect. It has an activated ability. This isn't going to see standard play. There's not going to be any Golgari spider control. It's not going to happen. But it's great for Commander, and I'm super happy that this card exists.
Aaron, you love it, don't you?
I do. I kind of died a little inside when Ruben said it's not going to happen in standards. I'm just like, Ruben, why?
Well, by all means, give it a shot. Some people need to be in the 0-1 bracket.
Whoa.
Yeah, because you can't be there 24/7, so other people have to relieve you. Just,
right.
Yeah, it's like a shift rotation. Just
very nice. All right, so we're gonna move on now to the Planeswalker. So there's another Planeswalker that we're gonna talk about here in a little bit, but let's talk about Liliana, the Last Hope. So it is the second 3-mana Liliana. It's a 2 black and 1 generic mana, 3 loyalty mythic Planeswalker. It has a +1 ability that up to 1 target creature gets -2/-1 until your next turn. -2: put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard. Then you may return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. And finally, her ultimate is -7: you get an emblem with at the beginning of your end step. Put X 2/2 black zombie creature tokens onto the battlefield, where X is 2 plus the number of zombies you control. So she is interesting. She's not the Veil. She's just not. It's not Liliana of the Veil anymore. You gotta understand that card was probably too good. It was pushed in a way that people didn't really understand at the time how good it was, and clearly, over the years we've absolutely seen how it's surpassed Jace the Mind Sculptor, and they only reprinted her once as like a special promo at the MCQ stuff, and like that card is unbelievable, and that is not this card. Liliana the Last Hope, I personally feel is okay, but is not going to be the format-defining card that Liliana of the Veil was, and I don't think Wizards wanted her to be. Wizards is like, this is another 3-mana Liliana, but let's not just break her in half when she gets Dark Ritualed, and let's not make her take over Standard to be so good in terms of value over turn after turn, particularly in a world where, Liliana of the Veil made you discard cards, and you don't really want something like that on the Last Hope because you have Madness.
Right. Yeah, I think that whenever you get compared to the best of a specific sect of cards. For example, this card is being compared to another Liliana, which just so happens to be the best 3-mana Planeswalker of all time. That's not fair. You can't just compare stuff. It's like whenever anything that makes you lose life and draws a card is compared to Dark Confidant, it's not fair. Because Dark Confidant is Dark Confidant, and Liliana of the Veil is Liliana of the Veil. You have to appreciate this for what it is. And first of all, this is a really good Delirium enabler. Being a Planeswalker, of course, by itself, and the -2 ability lets you filter while also putting cards into your graveyard. Being able to take out 1-drops, a lot of 1-drops, especially with humans being so popular, either pre or post combat. You can, sort of attack with your 2/1, get blocked by a 2/3, and then clear out the Sylvan Advocate after combat. I think that this card's quite good. Obviously, it's not going to be Liliana of the Veil, but it certainly has its place.
Aaron?
I like to classify this card as a grower, not a shower. It's not really impressive coming out of the gate, but I think that there's time for it. Kind of like Arlen Cord, and I think even Nissa Voices Zendikar, when she first came out, people were like, that's it? Like, you get a plant? Yeah. What? I think give it time. I certainly think in this meta, it's not very good right now. You have token decks everywhere, and Ruben brought up the really good point about how even 2/2, -2/-2 isn't enough to deal with a lot of creatures. So as of where we are right now, I don't think she's very good, but I do think there's a lot of potential there. And I think she also has really big shoes to fill. Like you said, Evan, it's like people, whether or not they should have done it or not, people were looking at this and going, and to be fair, every Liliana since the Veil has been kind of compared to that, where Dark Realms was like, well, this isn't Liliana the Veil, and there was I could have sworn there was another Liliana too, wasn't there? There was Dark Realms, and
Dark Realms was pretty bad, and I think it was the last one.
Okay, but even then, it's like, every Liliana since then has been compared to Of the Veil, and of course it's not going to be that. So do I think it's good right now? No. Do I think it will be? Yes. Like, I don't think they're going to let this one go and be terrible.
Yeah, I agree. And ultimately, what I want out of my Lilianas is something like, I don't think, a lot of people want Of the Veil. I do not. What I would rather have is, there's been Liliana Heretical Healer, the Origins Flip Planeswalker. So that's really only her other option other than the Dark Realms version. Or the Dark Realms, yeah, which was awful. Regardless, the next up is the Oath of Liliana. Now, I know that ultimately Wizards is like, okay, we can take this Battle for Zendikar block, and we can take Shadows of Innistrad block, and we can stick them together. We can tie them together. We can take something that we've done 3 sets for every block, and we can turn it into 2 sets here and 2 sets there and 2 sets here. And this Shadows of Innistrad block in particular certainly feels like it has the most growing pains. The first set doesn't seem to have a lot to do with the second set, but the second set, Eldritch Moon, seems to have a lot to do with Oath of the Gatewatch and Battle for Zendikar. And I know that you have these cards like Oath of Liliana where they're trying to tie it all together, and there was no black oath, and finally there's an oath, and it has some really great flavor text of "I'll keep watch, happy now." Like that's awesome. Seriously, I think it's beautiful and it's wonderful. But this is the whole set feels like the culmination of Battle for Zendikar block, and that Shadows over Innistrad was like this thing they kind of shoehorned in between the third set of Battle for Zendikar and, Oath of the Gatewatch. Oath of Liliana is a black and 2 generic mana rare legendary enchantment that when it enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a creature. At the beginning of each end step, if a planeswalker entered the battlefield under your control this turn, you put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield. So she gives you free zombies for playing planeswalkers. She is an edict effect in and of herself. But again, this to me was one of those cards where I know they're trying to put this like bow on a block thing, but the whole bit about there being Kozilek here and there being Ulamog there, and there's Emrakul in this set. It just feels a little forced. The whole thing feels a little forced, to be honest. It's like, well, how do we make it work when we have this third set kind of designed, but we don't really want to do, the third set thing? Like, well, we'll make it a mystery, and who knows what's in that package that's shaped like Emrakul, but certainly not Emrakul. And we talked a little bit about this last week. So, that card to me is just like, oh my God, it just feels like Battle for Zendikar set number 3, and it just kind of, it's really obvious to me.
Yeah, I read somewhere that apparently they were planning on making Emrakul a thing in the Innistrad block before they were planning on making the Eldrazi a thing.
That came from Maro's Twitter.
Was it? Yeah, okay.
Maro's Twitter.
Okay, that's fine, I guess. But still, I'm getting Eldrazi fatigue. Matt Sperling wrote a lot about it in his most recent Sick of It, that there are just too many. You can't have spaghetti monsters for dinner every night. You're gonna get a tummy ache, and that's kind of what's happening here. Specifically for the card Oath of Liliana, though, the card is quite good in an unknown metagame. Right now, obviously, with so many tokens decks running around, it's pretty bad. But in a blank slate kind of metagame, I could certainly see Oath of Liliana being quite good. And quite funny flavor text. I'll keep watch, happy now is pretty. It's sassy. Trying to outsass Chandra a little bit there. But I think the card is quite good. 3 mana edict effects, being able to rebuy it with Starfield of Nyx, being able to get it off of Deploy the Gatewatch in a pinch. This card could probably see standard play at some point. Probably not right now because of the just how many humans and token decks are around.
Aaron?
I really like the card. I think that it's very, Liliana is a character, and this card really embodies black mages and what being a black mage is all about. If you read the whole text of her oath, she basically does this because she acknowledges that she's too dependent on the chain veil. She acknowledges that she still has other demons that she needs to get rid of in order to sort of be free of these pacts that she's made. And so she acknowledges that she can't do it by herself. And so, she's not really joining the Gatewatch because she wants to save the world or she wants to save people or anything like that. She just kind of realizes that the journey she's on, she can't necessarily do by herself. And so, if she, allies with these people and she does some good things, then she's still getting something out of it too. And, that self-serving nature and that, that taking care of the self is very much a black mage thing. And so I was very happy to see this. And when I was able to read the rest of her oath, it was very Liliana and it was very relatable. And I was like, I get why she's doing this now. And it's a little different than what Chandra's doing. Because I had a discussion with a friend the other day about whether or not Chandra is a bad girl or a bad person, and somebody explained to me that they really are quite different. And so I love the flavor of this is just delicious for me.
Yeah, and I think Wizards did a great job, showing the card off in one of their latest video segments. they kind of got in, they flavor people, and they said, "Hey, what's Liliana doing?" They read off the entire Liliana oath when they were showing her oath, which I thought was really cool. The Access Magic episodes, as it were. So I think Wizards, knew that this is not the card that LSV spoils as, oh my god, constructed amazing. This is let's bring the story people in. How does she attack this menace? What does she do? How is she the last hope? Why does she have an oath in this set? Like, I appreciate the way that they at least presented how that all works. So we're going to move on here to one of the most, in my opinion, is probably the most exciting zombie, because it's a 1-drop that does what you want it to do. Cryptbreaker. Cryptbreaker is amazing. It is 1 black mana for a rare 1/1 zombie. For a black and a generic mana, you tap it and discard a card, you put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield. But the biggie is its second ability, which says, tap 3 untapped zombies you control, you draw a card and lose a life. Now, note, when cards are worded this way, you can use this ability the turn you play it. There is no summoning sickness here that you have to wait on. It is, I play a Cryptbreaker, and much like a Heritage Druid, if I have 3 zombies, much like if I had 3 elves, I can tap all of them immediately to get this really cool effect. It's drawing cards, which is what you want. This is a card you are happy to run 4 of, no problem, because if you draw multiples, who cares? Because they can make their own zombies, or they can get you more cards. So this is one of the best, and for me, one of the linchpins that was really necessary for a zombie deck to be treated seriously in Standard.
Yep, a 1-drop.
Correct.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only being a 1-drop, but also a 1-drop that can produce more power as the game goes on, and also create card advantage as the game goes on. I think that, had this card existed 5 years ago, people would have said there's no way that they're going to print that card. The card's way too powerful. And nowadays, it's not too powerful. But it's exactly what the zombie decks need. It needs, instead of virtual card advantage of getting back zombies from the graveyard, it needs actual card advantage sometimes. So, Cryptbreaker, I think, is just what the doctor ordered for the zombie decks.
But So I'm setting up something for the future for us to look at here shortly. Something you may have linked to me just now. But
kill it with fire.
Oh, I know, right? It's going to be great. So we're going to have to move really quickly here because we're starting to run out of some time. But I want to note a few things, and I'll quickly note some of my thoughts here. First is Grim Flayer. It's a green-black 2/2 mythic human warrior. This is one of those times where they make a 2-drop mythic, which is awesome, which is always kind of dangerous, honestly.
It is.
Which is a 2/2 with trample, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you look at the top 3 cards of your library, you put any number of them in your graveyard, and the rest back on top of your library in any order. That alone is an incredibly powerful ability. However, also, it has Delirium, which says it gets +2/+2 as long as there are 4 or more card types amongst cards in your graveyard. So it becomes a 4/4 trampler instead of a 2/2 trampler. It is great with, for example, Oath of Liliana, where you're wanting to get rid of whatever they played to block it.
Absolutely.
And once it hits a player one time, it's a pretty good chance you're going to turn on Delirium, which makes this card incredibly scary. So real quickly, how do you guys feel about Grim Flayer?
I think great. If Sylvan Advocate, and there was a card, oh god, what was it? It was 1/3, it was red, it had double strike, and anytime it dealt damage, you could exile a card and then play
Prophetic Flame Speaker?
Right, it's like if Prophetic Flame Speaker and Sylvan Advocate had a baby, it would be that.
Interesting.
I mean, this card's quite good. In a format that's full of 2/3s right now, you're going to be running into Sylvan Advocates, and now you're going to be running into things like Gnarlwood Dryad and stuff like that. It's just not. It's not what you want to be. Not what you want to be doing. But in a future, when there are less 2/3s around, fewer 2/3s around, less Reflector Mages to run into, then Grim Flayer is going to have its day in the sun.
Ruben, it got really dark by you.
Did it?
Yeah, you kind of, there you go. You looked like one of those people on crime shows, like when they bleep out the witness and they put them in the shadows and muffle their voice. I kept expecting you to have the muffled, and just, it was bad.
Wow.
Sorry.
So let's keep moving here really quickly. Let's talk about the Chaos Reveler. It is a 2-red, 6 generic mana, 3/4 Devil Horror, or a Diablo Horror, if you will.
Yep.
With it says it costs 1 mana less to cast for each instant or sorcery in your graveyard. It has prowess, because reasons. And when it enters the battlefield, you discard your hand and draw 3 cards. Holy crap, it comes with an Ancestral Recall, ladies and gentlemen, and it's red, and it plays nicely with burn spells. Oh my god. Yep. Gonna go ahead and throw down the gauntlet. I think this card is not very good. You know what? And just to get it all out, I've been here before. It reads so insane. It reads so sick. But the idea that the stars have to align in such a way, you have to have so many instances or sorceries. You have to cast at a time where you're okay with getting rid of your hand. You have to be able to take advantage of it if you draw 3 lands off of it instead of 3 actual spells from it. There's so many times where I've seen these just look great and just fail spectacularly. So, Ruben, how am I wrong, buddy?
Yeah. No, I get all of those worries, and this certainly does have the possibility of just falling flat on its face. I think that this card is much more likely to be better in older formats, and I think it's easy to see why. The cost reduction is much easier to get to when you have access to Gitaxian Probe, Ponder, Brainstorm, Thought Scour. Is one that I would really want. Things like mental note effects of various types are things that I would want to be running with this card. This card would find a home in blue-red Young Pyromancer Delver decks in Legacy and in Modern. I think that particularly Modern, there aren't really cards you care about discarding once you get to the critical mass. All the cards sort of do all the same thing. They either burn or they tempo. The spell pierces late game aren't nearly as good. You can cast your bolts, you can cast your void snares and stuff like that. And by the time you're discarding your hand, you either have no cards left or some useless spell snare or some useless daze in Legacy, or a stifle or something else that you can't really take full advantage of that you don't mind discarding so much. In Standard, certainly the madness effects on things like Fiery Temper are going to be much more attractive when you play this card. It's going to be tougher to get to. You're probably going to have to wait a lot longer, wait till maybe turns 5 or 6 to take full advantage of this card and still be able to pay a madness cost, as opposed to realistically turns 3 and 4. I mean, think about how quickly you could Treasure Cruise or Dig Through Time when those were legal in Legacy. So I think it has possibilities. Now, by no means is it broken, but any card that says draw 3 cards is worth my attention.
And I believe it should be worth your attention. But Aaron, it didn't get your attention at all, did it?
It got my attention only because I've been playing Dredge for a while, and when Dredge in older versions of Dredge, and even the no modern banless version that we played at CSL a couple weeks ago, you used to dread return for Sphinx of Lost Truths, because when you brought it back, you would be able to draw 3 cards and discard 3 cards, which would let you dredge yourself stupid. You dredge the majority of your deck, and you were basically going off at that point. And so if this was like 2009, I would be really excited about this card, because I could dread return it, dredge myself stupid, and have a gay old time. But now this is 2016, and we can just dread return Gristlebrand. So if this was a different time, I'd be really excited about this card. I do think it's good for the reasons you guys have listed, like in the decks you've listed. But for me personally, I just had a little chuckle at this, going, this card's about like 7 years too late.
Yeah.
Well, again, this is one of those that, I think, again, I've seen so many reads great, plays bad cards where I'm just like, you know what, just too many times, Wizards. You've done it too many times.
Been hurt too many times before. This card certainly has possibilities. I don't think that it's going to be a format-defining all-star, but certainly a deck like Modern Burn or Blue-Red Delver can take full advantage of this card. So we'll see if it does.
Fair enough. So the last card I want to talk about, we had a few more lined up, but we just don't have a lot of time to talk about them. Honestly, the one that I really wanted to touch a little bit on was Tamiyo, because she's ridiculous.
You want a Spell Queller.
But Spell Queller, Lord Almighty, this card is ridiculous.
Yeah.
A blue, a white, and a generic 2/3 rare spirit. Okay? It has flash, it has flying, but the killer is that ability. When it enters the battlefield, you exile target spell with converted mana cost 4 or less. When it leaves the battlefield, you exile the exiled card's owner may cast that card without paying its mana cost. So let's point out a few things here. First of all, it's an incredible tempo card. Whatever your opponent is trying to do on their 3rd turn, or sometimes their 4th turn, you can spell quell it just so you can have the tempo and you can have the advantage in that way. It is a 3 or less mana card, which means it can be turned over by, hey, Collected Company, and Bant Company is a thing, so it's going to slide right in there. But not only that, it can also counter other collected companies. In fact, in response to your opponent's collected companies, you can collect a company into Spell Queller to counter their collected company, because that's a terrific, fair thing to do. And lastly, because it is worded in a certain way, it's actually worded in what I would describe as the old Oblivion Ring way, which says if you were to cast Spell Queller and sacrifice it before its first ability resolves, then the spell is countered at that point. So this card is good coming, it's good going, it's good tempo, it's good early, it's good late, it's amazing with Collected Company, which is the best deck in Standard, arguably up there with white, aggro type decks.
Yep.
And I honestly, this was one of those spells where you go like, for God's sake, Wizards, this was really not necessary for that deck. And I know they can't predict things that much in the future, but man almighty, this card is crazy sweet.
Yeah, this is there's a lot of weird things happening on this card. It's templated super weird, so that you can do the bounce it back to your hand with crystal shard tricks to just constantly be exiling spells with converted mana cost 4 or less. And oh, by the way, exile target spell means that you can counter quote unquote abrupt decays and supreme verdicts, which is a huge deal for the older formats. Obviously, you can hit it off Collected Company, and that you can play it. If you don't have your own Collected Company, you can play like a tap land pass and counter your opponent's Collected Company. Having 3 toughness is a big deal. I know we finally just got the Incinerate, but it's also sorcery speed, and this thing has flash, in addition to being a creature with flying, which makes a big deal for Collected Company mirrors and all the sideboard tech that Humans is trying to bring in the mirror. This card is just an all-star, and I can't imagine that decks that win tournaments won't have 4 of them in it from week 1.
Aaron?
If I had to put my money on one card to have 4 copies in the winning deck of the Pro Tour from the new set, it would be this card.
Aaron, any thoughts on that?
I have nothing nice to say.
You got nothing. Wow, nothing nice to say. And look, and the last
I
bit,
tell you how good this thing is.
let me tell you, because the last thing that we haven't mentioned is that you can also ingest, or rather process, the exiled spell. Yeah, think about that.
Wow.
Because this card needed to be better than it currently is.
That's amazing.
Yeah, Spell Queller, ooh boy. So last one, I promise. I want to jump real quickly here to Tamiyo Field Researcher. We have to talk about this just a little bit. It's a Bant Planeswalker, a blue, white, and green and 1 generic mana for a 4 loyalty mythic rare Planeswalker. It has +1. It says choose up to 2 target creatures. Note those don't have to be your own. Until next turn, whenever either of those creatures deal combat damage, you draw a card. -2, you tap up to 2 target non-land permanents. They don't untap during their controller's next untap step. And finally, -7, you get to Ancestral Recall and Omniscience, which means draw 3 cards and you get an emblem with you may cast non-land cards from your hand without paying their mana costs. Let's really quickly note that if you have Doubling Season in play, you can play Tamiyo, ultimate her, and she still lives. Yeah. So this card is bananas. I gave this card to Emma Handy to preview, and Emma did a great job at explaining sort of the things that this card could do, where it could go into. Bant Company is already it's sort of a huge archetype. This card goes right in there. This card is unbelievably sweet, and I would love for Wizards R&D, if they're listening, if they're watching, if they're thinking about it, this card feels like, and it feels like R&D had this at 5 mana, and then Sarkhan Unbroken became a huge joke that did actual nothing, and they're like, yeah we got to push these 3 mana these 3 different color planeswalkers, because Sarkhan Unbroken should have been sweet but was garbage, so let's make her 4 mana instead of 5 mana. This absolutely feels like a card that was 5. They pushed it to 4 to keep it exciting, and then here we are in a Collected Company metagame going like, oh my god, why did you do this?
Yeah, it's this card is really scary. I don't think the ultimate is going to be too difficult to get to in the current, board locked kind of board states that you see in Bant Company mirrors, and so from that perspective, this thing is pretty terrifying. I mean, it starts at 4 loyalty and jumps up to 5 immediately, and 5 is as we've pointed out before is where you want your Planeswalker's loyalties to be at on your opponent's first turn to get a crack at them. It's got a a green-blue overlap kind of ability as its first ability, and then a blue-white kind of overlap ability as its second ability. And so flavorfully, from that perspective, I like it a lot too.
Aaron?
It's Bant colors. So
more nothing good to say.
All right, more nothing good to say. Fantastic.
The less that Aaron has to say about it, the better the card probably is, because it's going to ruin her lunch.
All right, so let's move on, lunch and all, to Gather the Townsfolk, where we're not going to talk about spoilers, but instead we're going to talk about the fact that Team Card Hoarder, teamcardhoarder.com now exists. Yep. They have a Prime team roster and they have an Academy team roster, which is a thing. I guess they want to split up their people, which
split
is
up the team a little bit. And they have like team captains on here, and they've got all their members listed and whatnot, and they want to tackle essentially the SCG tour. I can imagine the SCG is just over the moon over this, but someone, it's another type of organization wants to create teams in order to, play on their series, and they can talk about them, create storylines for them, and all that good stuff. Team Metagame Gurus has already made quite the name for themselves, mainly because they've done really well. Like, it's one thing to have a team, but if your team doesn't do well, then there's no talking points. Right.
So, more power to them. It's been really interesting that CVM is now apparently going to be flying, or going to multiple.
Going to a lot more events.
Yeah, yep. SCG opens when he lives in Seattle, so that's great for him. And I'm excited to see any new team do well. Aaron, how do you feel about this new concoction?
I love this. I've been a big proponent for like more professionalism on the competitive scene. I love what Jim Davis and his friends are doing. The jerseys are fantastic. I don't care what anyone says. Keep wearing them. I love them. I love what they did for Orlando when they donated some of their winnings to the good cause. I love this. I love seeing people take this game more seriously. I love the organization. I also kind of hope that these guys give us a peek into their world, because I think teams are something that everybody wants to do, and nobody really knows how to make it work. And so I look forward to Jim Davis kind of pulling back the curtain a little bit. I love seeing what these guys do, and hopefully it inspires more people. I think that this is just something the game, we talk about, the game becoming more, being an esport, being taken more seriously. And I think this, we've had teams for a while, but these are like teams, you know what I mean? And I love this. I love the fact that they have it separated by like the more veteran players versus the newer players. Those damn Kiefer kids, those kids are brilliant. Yes, put some money into them, make them awesome. I love this. I love Card Hoarder as a site. I think they're fantastic. I buy cards from them. Remember me when I stream. I can use a sponsor. I'm completely here for this. I see nothing wrong with this. I love their bios. Andrew Boswell's bio in particular. He loves Magic, and there ain't no breaks on this crazy train. That's literally what his bio says. God bless him. I mean, I'm completely here for this.
That's fantastic. So congrats to those guys. I hope they do really well. I hope they have their branding in order in terms of their apparel and things like that. As long as they get that stuff right, which I think the game, the Metagame Gurus have actually done a great job. I mean, sure.
Oh yeah.
The uniforms are loud, but they're kind of meant to be. Like they want to be
talking
seen
about them. Exactly.
Like they're here. We're talking about their uniforms and how they stand out because they stand out. That's sweet. So let's move on to the red zone. Let's move on to the good stuff. Let's get all the stuff that I can imagine those who are listening jump to it, or those who are watching is really excited for us to kind of dig in, because over the last couple of days, it's been kind of amazing in the world of MTG finance. And here is how I will kick this segment off. What it feels like is that Wizards chickens have come home to roost. Now, you can go ahead and call that a good old-fashioned redneck analogy of what's going on here. But let's just lay out the scenario. So what has happened recently is that Lion's Eye Diamond has experienced a online buyout and price increase. This has happened also for Sarah's Sanctum. It's happened also for City of Traders. It's happened for Gaia's Cradle.
Lion's Eye Diamond.
It's happened for, Lion's Eye Diamond and Moat has also happened on that one. So there's been a lot of cards that have spiked, basically sort of out of nowhere, quote unquote. They just all happen to be on the reserve list. And so there's a man named Craig Berry who's kind of became what I would describe as the Martin Shkreli of Magic. And oh God, this gets so much better. I can't stand it. So we have this guy who has a.
I'm gonna need my prop for this. So you do your thing. So
he has an interview on MTGprice.com with Corbin Hostler, who talks about how he basically found the opportunity to take advantage of financial opportunities in the Magic market, and how he said, look, these are cards that are very playable. These are cards that are very important in certain archetypes or against certain archetypes. And so, he began by speculating on Jittes, and then he began to speculate on Bitter Blossoms, and one thing led to another, and all of a sudden he's speculating, for thousands of dollars. When and Corbin asks him, how do you feel about people who call you the Martin Shkreli of Magic and saying you're hurting the game? And he's like, well, this one, I'll be honest, of the interview questions, of the fact of sort of the way he answered, the way he explained it, some of them feel like a little cop-outy, because he's talking about like, well, a lot of people think I do it maliciously, but I'm just running a business. He would make videos on Facebook where he would tell people, look, I'm buying all the Lion's Eye Diamonds. You want to get a Lion's Eye Diamond? Now's the freaking time, guys, because I've already gotten my fill. And it's insane. So, and then he says, well, I sold the near mint moat to $300 to a buddy of mine because I want to help out my friends. And, and then he, if it wasn't me doing this, it would be somebody else. And that's just the way the world works. Now, first of all, I really don't think the little sort of anecdote of I sold my friend a $300 moat because I'm being a good guy was really necessary.
Oh, he also brought up a teenager. He said there was a teenager at his local game store that wanted Lion's Eye Diamonds, and so he cut the kid a break too.
That is correct. But, he also mentions things like if Jace Viren's Prodigy ever goes below $26, he's buying $5,000 worth of it. And for what it's worth, all of that kind of stuff makes sense, sounds right. The card is insane. It's a mythic in a set that wasn't open very much, so on and so forth. And so, but the way that kind of Corbin wraps it up, he doesn't see him, he says, I believe Craig when he says he doesn't see himself as the bad guy. I certainly don't condone some of the vitriol the internet has spewed at him. This stuff has been going on for a long time. This Craig Berry guy has really just become the face of the speculator buyout stuff. What's happening here, again, the chickens come home to roost, is Wizards made a reserve list. And they said these powerful, important cards will never be reprinted again in their current form. They won't be functionally reprinted. They did some foil stuff for a while. They got chastised and they stopped that crap. And, ultimately, the way Corbin ends it is that I choose community over capitalism. And to which I say, that's a beautiful utopian idea, but we live in the real world, and the real world says Wizards created a system that can be abused by people with lots of money. What are they doing? They are abusing it with lots of money. And this is going to continue to happen. This is not going to stop, regardless of the fact this Craig Berry guy happened. And so let's just bring up a tweet from earlier. Oh my God, it gets even better. Martin Shkreli, the man himself who purchased the license to pharmaceuticals and raised the prices by a bajillion % to make himself lots and lots of money. Well, here we have Martin Shkreli creating a thread on Magic TCG. God, it's so good. He tweets, anybody know a lot about Magic the Gathering? His thread on Reddit is advice for a new and wealthy player. Craig Berry then responds to Martin and says, hey, I'm the guy who's been doing these buyouts. There's been some pretty outrageous things said, and people are comparing me to you. So it's actually kind of amazing as to what's happening here. And again, for me, and I'll just go ahead and I'll just throw this out 100%. I have no problems with what's going on here. Wizards did it to themselves. They're never going to undo it because of legal reasons. I'm not going to get into this promissory estoppel crap anymore. I'm just going to say, talk to a real lawyer who is like, lawyer by day, who knows copyright, who knows this type of lawyerly type stuff. And they'll explain to you, just like they did to me on Twitter, by a lawyer who said, here's all the reasons why it wouldn't happen. The point is, Wizards made this system. They made it to be abused. The fact that it hasn't been abused as much as it is right now over the years is honestly just luck. Congratulations, Legacy players. You kind of got it easy for a long time. And over time, it's happened, and it's happened again, and it's happened again. It's going to continue happening. This is not going to slow down. Martin Shkreli, it's only going to take one millionaire to make MTG Finance a ridiculous nightmare. And I swear to God, this is...
Well, some would argue MTG Finance is already a ridiculous nightmare. I mean, have you seen the hashtag? I mean, it's trash. Let's just put it out there.
You think it's bad now? Woo! We just getting started, y'all. And when people like Martin Shkreli, who actually have millions of dollars, can actually go buy literally every copy and say, well, guess what? Moat's $1,000 now. Guess what? I bought every Underground Sea that I could possibly find. I don't care to spend 6 figures on some cardboard because it's just stuff worth money. And so as much And as utopian as it is that, like, you know, you're supposed to be for the community and we need to make sure this stuff is available for people and such, I mean, P. Sully already broke it down. Like, are you supposed to be like, no, this $400 piece of cardboard should be $400, not $600? Look, guys, we're in a scenario of a world that Wizards made these cards that are incredibly powerful and good in these things. You give them the option to make money if you have the resources. People have the resources and are making money off of them. And Lord Almighty, we're just getting started. This is going to be, we're going to look back on this as probably the beginning of the end of a lot of those older cards having anywhere near a reasonable value.
You know, I've been watching this whole Twitter exchange go down, and it's kind of ironic that it kind of feels like the plot line of Innistrad is being echoed here. So Reddit is Innistrad, Buyout Boy is Nahiri. He set up his little crappy Cryptolith and channeled all of his energy and summoned Emrakul, who is this Martin Shkreli guy. I mean, it's basically, we're watching it unfold before our very eyes. I think it's glorious in a way, but... Okay, Ruben, you go. I need a minute. That one took a lot out of me.
Honestly, I was just going to watch you two go at it. I as someone who is as far detached from Magic finance as I can possibly get, you know, I find all of this fascinating and enjoy watching it from afar. I've known Craig for years. I know that he is a good person. And he's just a smart guy that knows how to take advantage of a situation. The fact that this has been set up in his favor, and he is going for the throat. He's not holding back with how he's proceeding with this. Is, I think, better because it demands attention faster from the powers that be. Someone needs to do something, or else this is just going to keep getting quote-unquote worse and worse. And by that I mean they're going to become sparser and sparser, and the hordes are going to get bigger and bigger, which is going to happen with everything that's in an unregulated market, like Magic the Gathering cards. You know, similar things in the past have happened with comic books and with baseball cards until reprints happened and either tanked the prices and ruined the value of the collected cards, or they were not reprinted and the collector's market around it died, and the finance community shriveled up as a result. And so something needs to be done if Magic wants to keep alive its unregulated card market. And I think that Craig is a symptom, not a cause of a larger issue here. That's just my opinion. I'm ready for you guys to fight.
Hey,
I would just have my bowl of popcorn over here.
I mean, ultimately, I think we all do agree on the fact that the reserved list is the problem. It is the disease. I think we all agree on that. Yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
Okay. Ultimately, though, I think it boils down to just because you can do a thing doesn't mean you should do a thing. You know, when we were doing the pre-show, you had mentioned the old adage of hate the player, hate the game. You know, I think when you say something like that, you say it as a way to absolve the person of responsibility. And to say that, you know, yes, you know, you can say that Wizards has created this system, and you can say that they have made it possible for people like Craig or even people like Martin, you know, to do what they do, and that's fine. But, you know, there are a lot of things that we can do in our lives. It doesn't necessarily mean that we should. And when we, you know, to deny that his actions are not having an impact and that they're not having a negative impact, I think is really disingenuous. Disingenuous? Is that how it goes? Disingenuous. Thank you. And so I think that there is some responsibility that needs to be taken here, and there are real people that are being affected by this. You know, I've been a big proponent of Dredge, obviously. I've done deck techs on it. I've had people in the past few days. I was at F&M when this went down. I got my Lion's Eye Diamonds for $80, and I was bitter about that when they were $80. I was like, this is highway robbery. I got my $320 worth of Lion's Eyes, and I was on my way. By the time I got out of F&M the other night, they were $250 a piece. So I now have $1,000 worth of Lion's Eyes. The deck that I love and that I want everybody to enjoy, people cannot enjoy that now. You know, he even mentions it in his article. He mentions the 16-year-old who wanted to build a deck, and he took mercy on him, took pity on him or whatever, and made sure that he got the Lion's Eyes. But, you know, we wonder why SCG cuts back their legacy support. We wonder why the prize support is not as great for these legacy events. We wonder why certain cities don't have a legacy scene. We wonder why legacy events online don't always fire. And ultimately it boils down to the lack of card availability, people not being able to play these cards. And it is sad and it is personal, and it is something that we can chalk it up to capitalism or any of these other cliches that we use to distance ourselves from the emotional impact. But these are real people that are being screwed over here. And I think that, saying, well, Wizards made it, hate the player, hate the game, I think those are just really kind of tired excuses. And, Corbin brought up a really good point of, choosing the community. Yes, he can do this. I could even maybe afford to buy a couple of these cards, but I think enough of people who might want to play with my deck that I'm not going to do that. And for whatever reason, this guy just doesn't feel the same way. And it's just sad. I think it's just really sad.
I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. And again, you're saying this guy is looking at a scenario where it's like you could make thousands of dollars, but you really shouldn't make thousands of dollars because this one kid wants to play Dredge maybe at this upcoming event. There's none of that holds water in a world where you can make money off of basically Wizards' mistake. This is Wizards' problem. They made it, and someone is finally, honestly, just capitalized on it in a way that they could for years.
You could also spend that time getting good at the game and go play GPs and earn money winning GPs. There are so many other ways that you could make money through this game that don't involve, crapping on people on a large scale like this.
Some people are good with a sword. Some people are good with a longbow.
Some people are better at content.
Some people are better at playing. Some people are better at playing. Some people are better at making content. Some people are better at buying and selling Magic cards. You're blaming a person for taking advantage of a system that was set up for them.
Absolutely.
And you're saying that they're a bad person by following all of the rules set out by the companies that are out there, by the powers that be. There are prices, and when you purchase certain amounts of cards, some of those prices go up. Well, what am I supposed to do? Not use that information?
I mean, and for what it's worth, on the flip
pay
side,
my rent. This is a job.
That's like him posing with his baby to get good PR on his post. Oh, please.
It's a
pay
little,
my rent.
It feels a little much. Well, there was a lot of kind of like PR feel to the piece because there was the picture of himself with the baby. There was also there was a couple of anecdotes of him helping out the teenager and help his friend get a $300 moat or whatever. Like those things, it's like, I'm a person who has feelings. I get it, but again, for me, like I understand it. I'm not judging the person for taking advantage of a system that was literally like, can you take advantage of me? And it's like, all right, here's a couple $1,000s, and then it gives them back more. And he goes, all right, I'll put some more $1,000s, and it gives them back more thousands of dollars. And on this goes, and it gets crazier and crazier. It feels weird to have this like debt to society thing when they didn't do anything wrong. If he felt that great
about what he was doing, he wouldn't have snuck all of those anecdotes in his post. Like if he would have just owned it, like if he would have done that interview with Corbin,
if he would have owned it, made Facebook videos telling everyone that he was about to buy out cards 24 hours before doing so.
There were things he did. Yeah, but there were things in that interview. He didn't need to do so. He didn't need to bring up some of the things that he brought up. He didn't need to take some of the pictures he did. There was obviously some part of him that felt the need to either do some damage control or do some sort of backpedaling. And if you're going to own it, freaking own it across all formats. But he obviously felt the need to do this interview and spin things in a certain way because he knew that not everybody's going to be down with his cause. And
I don't think that he felt a need to do the interview. I think he was contacted by Corbin.
He didn't need to do the interview.
I don't think that Craig contacted Corbin.
Look, all I'm saying is,
well, you also know him, so you're not impartial to all.
I know them both.
Exactly.
Sure, and I mean I know Corbin, but what I'm saying is I appreciate the kind of the altruistic view. I just think it doesn't apply, and it really can't apply. If it's not this Craig Berry guy, it's just somebody else who doesn't make videos, who doesn't take interviews. They just silently spend $12,000, buy out the internet, and make money off of it. Like whether they do it in the front of you, whether they do it behind closed doors, there's the game. Yeah. And there's the player, and I can't hate the guy. I can't. They set up rules that he is taking advantage of. And if anything, Wizards should work harder to get rid of the restricted or reserve list. They should work to make cards that work around it. That will, because there is a tipping point. All right, so let's talk about this. There is a tipping point of if Moat gets to $2,000, there's going to be a point where it stops selling. There's going to be a point where people stop buying it at those prices. Things will go down when the demand goes down, but the demand is high. And the supply is stupid, crazy low. And it's a market where, because it's unregulated, there can be insider trading. We've heard of crazy stuff like people making up tournament reports to blow up cards. I mean, that has happened. Basically, you go back, and we've talked about this before, you look at everything that people did to take advantage of the stock market before it was regulated in any way, and it's literally happening right now. So what you're going to see is this crazy spiral of people with a lot of money see a lot of opportunity, and until Wizards says there is the possibility, however remote, however crazy, that another Black Lotus could be printed and could be a official Black Lotus, that this is going to continue. The spiral is going to just get crazier and crazier.
I honestly really liked Cardboard Crack's answer in his most recent comic, where you just print oversized cards and have oversized legacy and oversized vintage. It makes for a better spectator sport. You don't have reserved list problems.
You know what you know what the funny thing is? You know the one way that this could all be completely destroyed? Counterfeiters.
Yeah, well,
if the counterfeiters,
that's the other elephant in the room, is once counterfeiters go, oh, these are worth $1,000 a piece.
Right.
Interesting.
And if their fakes get so good that you cannot tell fake from real, all of this, the entire house cards just goes, whoof, that's it.
Yep.
Like all of that money that these speculators who are being hated on and saying they're hurting the community and blah, 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 if the counterfeits get good enough, then the market will reset, and honestly, kind of all hell's going to break loose. But this is incredibly fascinating stuff. And for Martin Shkreli to even create a thread, to even say what's Magic the Gathering, that's serious business.
It's getting into a different realm that we're getting into at that point.
Correct.
The last thing I have to say is that, I know that we keep saying that if it isn't going to be this one person, it's going to be this other person. And I'm actually surprised a little bit that this hadn't happened earlier.
True.
Cards have been spiking in price for years, and when Underground Sea hit $200, I thought to myself, wow, there's no way people are going to be able to afford Legacy at this point. Right. Black Lotuses have been $5,000 for bad ones for years. So I think that that this was only a matter of time, and the fact that first of all, that there is a face, and it's Craig, which is somebody who's been within the Magic community for a long time and knows people, as opposed to an outside source that came in and messed with everybody's favorite card game, I think is a little bit of a boon. Like, if you have to choose a way for this to happen, Oscar Wilde always said, true friends stab you in the front. And I think that applies here, where at least we know who's doing it.
So all I would say is that ultimately, Magic the Gathering is a collectible card game. Collectible means that the items that you have can drastically change in value, and sometimes in a very high way. I'll note the inverse of all this, because I don't think we've ever spoken of it, is that there are people who are really excited about their cards being worth a lot of money now. There are multiple people who have contacted me, old buddies of mine, go, Blood Moon's worth what? Fulminator Mage is what? And they'll go through the litany of all these cards. Grove of the Burn Willows is it's ridiculous. Some of the cards.
This is the old dichotomy of, I want my cards to be worth a lot, but I want the cards that I want to not be worth a lot.
Right. I want them to be cheap and affordable, and if only everything was just cheap and we'd have a great card game. No, you'd have Hearthstone, where everything's 1,600 dust max, and you can just go spend your money and make sure that nothing inflates or nothing goes crazy. Can't speculate.
And I'll say this, for the first time in the history of Magic Mics, I think Hearthstone has peaked. I think Hearthstone, there's no more. Uh-oh. This is where Hearthstone is.
Wow.
That's my opinion.
Sure.
That's a whole topic for another day.
Any final thoughts, Aaron?
No, I'm good.
Fair enough. I think we've all said a lot of pieces here.
I still love you guys.
And we still love you back. So let's move on, rounding the corner to the finisher. And this week, Wizards of the Coast showcased the Fblthp of the next generation, the adorable yet terrifying kitten on Harmless Offering. We know that the tabby on the art deserves its own name, so if you had your own Eldrazi-laced kitty cat, what would you name it, Aaron?
I'm thinking I would name the cat Jason Momoa, because it's super cute and has a dangerous backside.
Ooh.
Well done.
Ruben?
I think I'd name mine Versus System because it looks good, like it should be good, but always ends up being bad in the end.
Wow. Well, I'm in favor of calling the kitty Johnny Manziel. That's how you say that? Manziel. Johnny Manziel, because it's small, it's weirdly adorable, and it's never going to see competitive play.
Oh, that's low.
So, ladies and
Apparently he got on an airplane the other day wearing his Browns jersey.
That's okay. I was reading I've read some bizarre stories today. There was one football player that they found in a sinking car. It was sinking in a lake. There was another guy that fell asleep in a museum during a wedding. Like, what are these guys doing where this is their lives? Like, come on. Like,
wow.
Insanity. Yeah.
Pro
all in one day.
Man.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So, ladies and gentlemen, that ends another episode of Magic Mics. I would like to thank my co-host for joining me. Aaron, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Ruben, thanks for joining us.
I'll see you at the tables.
Absolutely. As you do.
Yeah.
Going to our final slide here. So that wraps up another episode of Magic Mics. Thank you guys for joining us here to discuss all things Magic. I want to thank you guys for watching. My co-host, hope you support us at patreon.com/magicmics. Visit our website at magicmicspodcast.com that exists thanks to our Patreon supporters. Or follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, and do everything social that tells people that we exist. Catch us online at twitch.tv/magicmics, on Twitter at magicmicscast, on Reddit at reddit.com/r/magicmics, and on Facebook at facebook.com/magicmics. Talk to us privately at magicmicspodcast@gmail.com. Follow the audio-only podcast at magicmicspodcast.libsyn.com, or find us on iTunes, or join us here next week, same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mics. Good night, everybody.